This is Out Loud and Live with JC Alvarez. Singer, songwriter, and entertainer Bright Light has energized the music scene with his emotive Europop tunes and new disco dance-infused hits. His latest album, Enjoy Youth, immediately climbed up the charts and set the soundtrack for the summer season. Joining me today, especially this time of the season, we're celebrating Pride from coast to coast, musical artist Bright Light, Rod Thomas. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I definitely want to discuss the success of the new album, which is fantastic. And so much in the season of things that are happening right now. But I'd like to start with a little bit of getting to know you.
Okay, let's go. Let's get to know me.
You hail from Wales, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Tell me a little bit about growing up in Wales and certainly about how you first got exposed to music, because from what I gathered, you were always musical.
Yeah. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, really, in the middle of the countryside, and I was an only child as well. So it was, very tranquil, very peaceful, which I think drew my brain to look for sounds and dynamics and noise and rhythms and stuff. So radio was a big thing for me growing up, listening to the radio in the car and the bus on the way to school or on little Walkman or whatever. Um,
I
I
remember
think,
those.
yeah. Music was just very exciting, and it really helped me to learn about people that weren't like myself, and to learn about things that happen in the rest of the world that didn't happen where I lived. So
Right.
I loved listening to music, and I found it so exciting to hear these like crazy dance songs on the radio, or like, ballads or whatever, like everything that was coming out at the time. And I feel like the late 80s, early 90s was such a melting pot of styles as well, that
Yeah.
it was really interesting to see styles fusing and being sampled and voices popping up on records that you didn't expect. I really I'm grateful that I grew up in a time where the radio was quite prominent. So it was
Yeah.
curated, but there were weird shows that were quite experimental on UK radio. So I'm very grateful to them.
Oh, absolutely. I agree as well. I think there was a certain amount of bravery in artists in the 80s into the 90s, especially because they all had to deal with a whole different form. The music video was starting to take shape. So we're starting to see them and they were starting to perform. So we had this visual as well as this audio, but there was all this sort of like really like just taking risks with music and experimentation. A lot of artists play a lot of their own instruments. Like, I think about Prince, for example, who played so many of
Mm.
his own instruments. You as well, or play a lot of your own instruments. And do you prefer that sort of practice of playing your own instruments on your music?
It's not really like a preference or an ego thing. I just do it. I mean, I'm somebody that just really likes to get things done, and I can do a certain number of things, not like better than anyone else, but definitely to a point that I need. And so I'm just a person that really like gets on with it. And I did actually learn the saxophone for the choreography album because I was frustrated trying to find a saxophone player that was available. Um, so I took lessons and learned how to play it. I like the challenge, and I think it's kind of cool to learn something new as you get older and not to rely on, just what you know. So for me, that was like a fun challenge, and it definitely re-engaged my world of music theory. And I think I got better at all the other instruments from learning that one as well. So that was a fun challenge. I'm definitely not Prince's level of proficiency, but I think it's kind of fun to be able to shape, say at least 80% of the song yourself, and then get other people on if you need them. Like strings, I can't play strings.
Right.
So I have friends that I work with that for.
Yeah, you're extremely collaborative and you work with a lot of different artists. You seem to enjoy that part of the process of like pulling people together. And that's also a great thing when it comes to dance pop, because you started recording as Bright Light in about 2010, correct?
Yes.
And when you started recording music, you did you gravitate instantly to dance pop and sort of like dance artists and collaborating with dance artists, or did you discover it when you started recording as Bright Light?
I renamed to Bright Light when I started making dance pop music because I'd always wanted to. I just didn't really have the means or the money, or the equipment to do it really. So my dream was always to make sort of like pop dance music. And I just took a leap, I suppose. And then my manager at the time contacted a guy called Brian Holland, who works as Boom Bip, and he's an amazing electronic producer. So I worked with him on two tracks. And then a guy called Andy Chatterley, who's worked with like Pussycat Dolls and Uncle and lots of like crazy, crazy people on my first single. So it was really cool for me to be able to finally dive into the world that I wanted to. And that was a very collaborative process, which I really enjoyed. You know, I do a lot of stuff myself, like we just talked about, but for me, collaboration is so much more fun
Mm,
because music is really a connection uh, conduit
right.
between the listener and the creator and between an audience and a soundtrack or a movement and a sound. And I really like bringing in as many collaborators as I can, because in the creation process you definitely think in different ways when you're with somebody else than when you're by yourself. So I feel like people kind of unlock little parts of my brain that don't get, that sort of lie dormant if I'm just by myself. You can not lazy, but you don't have the exterior forces pushing you a lot harder than you would be if you're by yourself. It's just really nice to have something that sparks an idea and then your brain responds to it. I'm a really good responsive creator. So
Mm.
my favorite way to write songs is if I'll hear like an instrumental and I'll piece together the vocal parts over the top of that. I find that really fun and really fast.
Right.
And I'm good at that. I'm a puzzle solver. But if you give me like a blank canvas, that takes me a lot longer to try and find the starting point. I find that's the hardest thing. So when you're collaborating, you can find multiple different starting points and have a million ideas on the boil. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, during the course of your career now as Bright Light, and recording, you seem to have gravitated to a series of influences that made them very contemporary. I mean, it's like we can hear a lot of pop sounds from Pet Shop Boys, that classic tunes that they've done a lot of influence there. Was that deliberate? Were you paying homage to these artists, and what artists influenced you in your experimentation with dance music and bringing it into a contemporary light?
I think initially, no, it wasn't intentional. I think it was just what I knew.
Right,
I was
right.
working with the references that I knew and what I liked and what really made me excited about music. So I think I was just drawing on the things that turned me on most in music for the first record, and sort of trying to work with other producers and their influences too. And then I think as I moved on throughout my career, then I did definitely make a point of bringing my influences and my loves and my niches into the mix so that I could make the music more a reflection of who I am as an artist. I
Mm,
think, the first album was somewhat a happy accident, and it wasn't really written start to finish. It was a collection of songs that I shaped together. And then after that, the sequencing and the choosing of songs was a lot more intentional and a lot more focused. So I got to curate the sounds and I got to curate the moods and the sort of like the drive and the direction of the album a lot more, which was really fun. And as I did that, then I was able to make it more of a reflection of like the inside of my brain as well as like the inside of my personality, I guess.
since then, you've recorded all this really rich, narratively rich dance music.
In this new album, the title track, Enjoy Youth, is about my relationship with my friend who I love so much and I haven't seen for years because she lives in Beijing now. But that's very much about our relationship. The rest of the album was written to be euphoric and exciting and uplifting. So that album isn't really about my personal experience. It's almost about my like projected desired experience or something to remind me that you can get out of a slump or you can find moments of joy in the day. So I wrote it to remind myself to look for the positive in things. So it's not
That's
really
right.
about my experiences per se, that album.
Right.
But there's always songs on the album which are about things I'm going through or things that are important to me. Like on Fun City, This Was My House is about how my one of my friends' fathers or mother, I forget which one it was, told them that they were going to vote for Trump, even though they explained how it would impact their lives and their friends' lives, and they still said they were going to do it. And I walked away from that conversation. I wrote that song in my head on the 5 minute walk home, and I just recorded it into my phone and took the a cappella and just produced around it. Like In Your Care is about leaving my parents and family and friends. Saying Goodbye is Exhausting is about a friend who died. There's songs throughout the catalog that are inspired by personal events, but it's not really like, hi, this is me, listen to my life. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I sometimes think that there's only, we don't really want our musical artists to just put it all out there for us. There's a certain amount of mystery. You certainly put a lot of yourself into the videos that you do. Sometimes I imagine that you've already got the video in mind, and then the song is kind of like starts taking shape, or did the song come first and then the video kind of like came next?
There's usually like a visual element when I'm making the songs. Um, I think I'm quite synesthetic or synesthesia. Synesthesia is when you listen in colors, right? Or when you think in
Yes, yeah,
colors,
yeah.
which is definitely something that I do. And then I work with people that I trust whose visual work that I really like to shape the ideas in my head and to work out a kind of visual storyline for the videos. But I have a lot of fun doing the videos. I think growing up at a time where music videos were on television, it's exciting to make videos. And it feels like such a treat to be able to do a music video because I really like watching them. So that's
Yeah,
always
yeah.
a really fun part of the process for me.
Yeah, I miss MTV, and I miss that. I miss the whole, when there would be a world premiere video. It's really something that's missing in our culture and in our music. So it's like I'm grateful when there are artists, especially lately. There've been a lot of artists that have been taking the music video seriously again, and really working their music. The album Enjoy Youth, I think is almost it's very current. It feels very optimistic and very inspired. It has a really great energy that I really think the LGBTQ community needs to gravitate to right now, because there is so much disparity and so much uncertainty within the LGBT community, especially with a title like Enjoy Youth. Was that something that was inspiring this music? Sort of like what you were seeing around you, and how the community was sort of in a bit of turmoil?
It was more that I feel like since 2020 or since COVID, I just really wasn't very happy at all. And I needed to write something to pull myself out of that. I think I'm not alone in the experience of people feeling somewhat forgotten about by their industries or isolated in ways that they weren't before since COVID happened. And, it just wasn't great. Like clawing your way back to what you were doing before in your career. I didn't have any financial support for that. And um, certainly didn't have the marketing budget to keep myself on the internet platforms front and center like some people did during COVID. So it was really sort of reminding myself to look for the positives in things after a couple of years of just really not feeling very buoyant. I don't think that's just an LGBTQ plus experience. I think that's quite universal.
Yeah.
But it has timed, I think it landed at a time where people also need reminders about the things we're going to deal with this year and the things going on at the moment because just things are so volatile. Just to
Yeah.
remember that joy is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that is there. It's extremely relevant, and you feel it. The album to me is extremely present. I love Revived, and then as soon as that finishes, it goes right into Every Emotion, which I think is like I like that song better. It's almost like
Mm.
an escalation. You get to this wonderful escalation, and then Sweet Release says so much. It's just so lyrically rich. You almost want to stop and then go, I want to dance this, but I want to hear these lyrics. So
Good.
so and that's rare. I think it's rare in the genre, because dance music is meant to emote and get us moving. How fantastic when the story that's in it that puts you in a place. It reminds you of a place. So I certainly appreciate that about the album, and congratulate you on that. You tricked me. You released the album with 12 tracks, and then almost 3 days later there was a deluxe version with
Mm.
four extra tracks on it. which are fantastic. And I get very confused when artists do this. Did those four tracks, did they not did they not blend into the
No,
original
they
12
they
track?
don't. In my mind, they're not part of the album, but they are songs that were floating around during the time. And you know, Return to Me was actually released as a single, but it's Megan's song that I co-wrote on and produced for her. Um, but I really loved it, and I did ask her if it would be okay to do it as a kind of like bonus track edition because it's part of the story of that year building
Yeah.
up to the album release. Um, but yeah, the others they don't really for me they're not really part of the story of what I wanted the album to be, or they're like an extra side note because I don't think that they needed the space on the album that I feel like the other songs do, but I'm very happy to have them in the story of the album, if that makes sense.
I would imagine you're having a lot of fun performing these live, especially
Hmm.
now. You know, what is
Yeah,
that like when you see the audience respond to them?
it's been crazy, like we did the first couple of shows in the UK and people knew the words the day after the album was out, and that hasn't really happened to me before. Um It hasn't happened to me before. It's not a joke. Like, I'm not an
Wow.
artist that has millions of streams, and it was really like arresting to see that people knew the words after, a couple of hours of them being out, and then
Yeah.
a week later at a festival, people singing along with one of the songs from the album. It was just really mind blowing, and it was amazing. So it felt much more than any other point in my career that the album has connected with people. Um, Much, much, much more than any other album I've ever put out. I really hope that I get to travel quite a bit with this album this year. We're just sort of working out live dates at the moment. I'm excited to. I find singing these songs very empowering, so I'm really looking forward to doing shows with them. Especially with an album that has connected to people. It does feel like so wonderful to have that before I've even gone to do the shows. I'm really looking forward to being able to hear them in a room with people and
Yeah,
just feel that connection.
I bet. Absolutely. Bright Light, Bright Light. Rod Thomas, thank you so much. Congratulations on the album.
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear the live album because I'm hopeful that, as you take it on the road, you're going to be inspired to record another live album, and
We'll
and
see.
we'll and we'll get to live it. If we can't get to see you live, we'll get to experience it. But thank you so much for spending some time with me.
Thank you for having me.
This has been Outline and Live with JC Alvarez. My thanks to Bright Light for spending some time with us. Purchase the new album, remixes, and check out his upcoming tour schedule at brightlighttimes2.com. For more entertainment and pop culture news, check out thefansite.com. Thanks for joining me, and always stay tuned.